Just mark late on the top of it, and we'll deal with it later. Give that half. Quilter. Who was it? Katie. Lots of hair. Just write late on the top. Okay, anyone not finished? Okay. If we had to search on our phone, if we had to just in a sentence describe what this chapter was about, what would it be?
History.
Some history. Okay. Yes, Steve.
Tomato harvesters.
You remember reading about tomato harvesters.
Yeah.
Okay, so you remember there's something you remember specifically about it. The entire chapter wasn't about tomato harvesters, but you are about 5% right. Make a note of that. Okay. Anyone else? Adapting to change.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else?
Say the research and the history.
Okay. It kind of talks about how we got to where we did with diffusion research. And so there's a couple things I want to focus on. And one is this graphic. Okay? And it's basically journal articles that have to do with diffusion. Okay? 1941, 1980, and if we continued that for the next 40 years after that, we would follow a similar trend here. Okay? What does it tell you looking at that graphic? And that's articles in journals by researchers about the diffusion process. Okay, so research that was done in developing countries came after research that was done in the United States. I'll take that. Okay. Anything else?
Early fallen in like 1969.
There's this peak of research that was done on diffusion, okay, in the 60s. And then it's completely fallen off since then to where there's not much written about it now. Okay? Your author said the first edition of his book was in 1962. Okay, I was born in 61. Okay. Anybody concerned with any of this? Dr. Price, who was department head here from 1955 to 1975, I'd have him come speak to my class, and I would tell the students at that time, Dr. Price has been retired for more years than you've been alive. Okay? But Dr. Price grew up on a farm in Hitchcock, Oklahoma, out west by Taloga, Visai area. He said when he came to OSU, he got a job at the experiment station down at Perkins. And he was using a team of horses. And he said at home we had Caterpillar crawler type tractors that we used. And he said I come here to college and I'm not even learning about stuff that the technology that I used at home. And so he's kind of disappointed that Oklahoma A&M was kind of behind the times in terms of technology. Okay? Is somebody sitting out here saying, how come I'm reading about stuff that had its peak 40 or 50 years ago? There must be some rationale to this. Okay? And rather than lead you any further, the only thing that you can take from this is a body of knowledge that has been accumulated, and we think we've answered all the questions. Why has research fallen off here? We think we know the answers to these questions about diffusion. Why people adopt, how they do change, when it happens, who's the first, who's the last. We think we know. Okay? So in some ways, I want you to be assured, to have a warm feeling inside, that this thing I'm studying, we think it's right. Okay? Still with me? Okay. The next is, and where I was asked as far as what you get from the chapter, this chapter is basically the diffusion. I don't know if you remember me saying, but diffusion of innovations or this whole diffusion conceptualness is taught whether in communications departments or rural sociology or ag education or ag leadership or communications. I may have said communications twice. Or marketing. And it's because this tells you that we've worked in anthropology, we've done it in sociology, we've done it in rural sociology, we've applied it to education, we've applied it to public health, to communications, to marketing, geography, sociology, and even others. You get done with this chapter and you say, oh, this diffusion thing isn't just limited to one discipline. And so your author then takes you through example after example after example to show you, okay, this is what it's like in this discipline. Okay, this is the change that's going on and how it might be studied. So if I take that and say, okay, from here, from 1970 to 2018, what's different? What's different in the world from the early 70s to now almost 2020?
Technology.
Okay, more?
Like the advancement of computers, like the size of them.
Okay, so 1970, we didn't have computers. The computers were in large rooms. Okay? Okay. Now you have more computing power in your telephone than in any of the large room computers. So we have technology, and the question would be is how is it adopted? How do people choose to buy or use this technology? So technology that's changed. That's a big one. Anything else changed? How has agriculture changed?
Going more like corporate farming and big companies that like a lot of food.
Okay. So you may have relatives, great-grandparents, that maybe survived on 80 acres and sold corn or cattle or hogs when they needed money. They were subsistence farmers. And then we had family farms, and now we have more, we can call them family farms, but corporations or limited liability corporations or partnerships that are very large. Okay, we have the technology of GPS, we have fertilizers we didn't have, we have chemicals that we didn't have before. And so how we adopt those, that's all happened during that 50 years. Technology, agriculture, has anything else changed?
Transportation.
How so?
Cars are a lot more efficient, and a lot of people are flying everywhere.
Okay, air travel is more popular. Somebody might say it hasn't changed at all. We're still driving cars. Except that if you lived in certain metropolitan areas, mass transit has changed. Okay? So if you were in Washington, D.C., or you're in Chicago, or you're in New York, and you're getting around, you'd say you can't get around in a car. You're going to ride the L or the subway, and you're going to ride out to the airport and that. And so mass transit has been adopted more than it was at that time. Anything else? We've got transportation, we've got agriculture, we've got technology. Yes, ma'am?
Our government and like our legislations and everything affected.
Oh boy. Tell me how you think our government has changed.
Well, like with just in general, like
You want to back off that?
yeah.
Anybody think? I think she's right. She just doesn't know she's right.
I didn't read. I just thought I would read the chapter, but just in general.
I bet it's the same. I bet it's the same. Other than in towns, in cities, lots of times we have city managers instead of bailing out here. Instead of elected officials electing mayors who have all the power. Okay, even in Mayberry, they probably have a city manager now. Catherine?
One of the things I thought of was like healthcare and mental health issues.
Okay, let's take physical health and how that kind of care. How's that changed?
Well, the obesity rate is insane.
Okay, people are unhealthiness and obesity has changed. Okay, mental health. We either have more unstable people or we acknowledge it more. We're not sure which it is, but certainly the stigmatism of mental health has been reduced, and people are not as are more willing to come forward and say, I need some help. Okay? So healthcare, transportation, government, agriculture, technology, anything else?
Education.
Tell me.
So we have like in schools now you have like Common Core, you have to like STEM programs and like different types of like scholarships to go to college and more people going to college and we have like trade schools, like more people doing that kind of stuff.
No. Education's different. That's probably not the most glaring way.
Teaching methods have changed.
Teaching methods different. Faculty didn't used to stand up and lecture to you. What did they used to do? Oh, they stood up and lectured to you. Can you give me an example of a teaching method that in 1970 didn't exist?
I don't know. A lot of the methods back then were memory based. A lot now it's changed. It's more
Experiential learning. Okay, I'll buy that. Anything else in education?
It was online.
Online education. Oh my gosh, you can. So within the public school, that's just exploded. The kids that don't go to school in a physical building, they stay home and go to school. You can, for your bachelor's, your associate's, for your graduate degree, you can earn a degree and not move to campus. That is huge. Okay, so now we add education to it. Anything else? Television. Have you had an elder tell you that there were 3 channels? They were ABC, CBS, and NBC, and maybe, depending where you were, you might have gotten public television, and that was it? Okay. So how we watch entertainment certainly has changed. Entertainment and television viewing has changed in your lifetime to where now we are going maybe back to the antenna. Anyway, so all this says that diffusion we can use in all these disciplines, not just agriculture. So pick whichever one you want and we'll be able to use it. But in this class, we'll talk a lot about the changes that are made in agriculture. Okay? So I want to work through some of those. Have a quiz.
You have the numbers on this stuff. The numbering.
There's only 10 questions.
There's 11.
1, 2, 3,
2,
5,
3.
6.
Oh, I'm sorry. Wonder how that happened.
Did it miss number 4?
I don't know what happened to number 4. Well, we can't do that then. We'll just have to forget about that. Okay. Invisible colleges. Discussion question number 1. Consider your professors at OSU. Are they members of an invisible college? Okay. If I'm a member of an invisible college, what is it?
Departmental. If you come together and you have research and that kind of stuff, and you can also get on board with it. How you support it.
When do people in my invisible college get together, and where do they get together? Say it again? No. We're going to get together in Birmingham, Alabama, Super Bowl weekend, our invisible college.
Or the ag leadership, whatever it's called.
Yeah. Did people in the rodeo invisible college get together in Denver?
I don't know about the rodeo.
There was a guy who was killed. Landed on his.
It's not my department, but
It's not your invisible college.
I have no idea.
Was there any people that market purebred livestock? Did they get together in Denver for their invisible college? Anyway, so invisible college is just a way of describing those people that get together and exchange ideas. Okay? And it happens a lot at the university level because we get together at conferences and yours was revolved around skiing, and then also there were some animals that were exhibited and things. But in Birmingham, Alabama, we will go and there'll be a big Super Bowl party, and then we'll also hear some research that's done, and we'll exchange some ideas. And so your author wants you to know is that's how ideas go from one area to another through these invisible colleges, these groups of people. Sometimes they're really called an association or an organization, and they have conferences, and sometimes they do that through journals. But anyway, it's an informal group of people who are sharing ideas with each other. Number 2, why is diffusion research considered to be passé among rural sociologists? Anyone take a stab at that? You have no idea? What does it mean to be passé? Outdated. We don't do it anymore. So before we can answer that, we may have to talk about what rural sociology is. If you want to study rural sociology, can you major in it at Oklahoma State University? You can't. Why not? It's a discipline. There's a journal of rural sociology. Your author is a rural sociologist. How come we don't have rural sociology at Oklahoma State University? You're saying there's not any rural part to study in Oklahoma?
There are, but like not in the sense of like rural, I guess in small, low population, third world countries, I should say.
That are more rural than Oklahoma?
Well, there are. I was saying Oklahoma's not more rural than those areas, and that's what you're saying. I don't know.
If I drive west, I can drive a long time and there aren't any people. I mean, it's really rural. I can drive east of here and it's pretty rural too. I can drive south and north. And Penny always comments that, geez, people want a place to live. There's lots of places they could live out here. There's just so much space. She grew up in Houston. So there's lots of ruralness here. And rural sociology is the sociology of rural areas, if that's different than urban sociology. Okay, why people do what they do, how we bring health care to areas, education, how is that different in rural areas than in urban areas? Anybody else want to take a shot at how come we don't have rural sociology as a major, as a form of study here? Not from your master's either, or PhD.
Can you not afford it?
Who?
Like,
The state?
yes.
I think that's probably right. We're a poor, rural southern state. When Bill Clinton ran for president, he'd been a governor. Big deal. I'm a governor. I mean, it's a lot of responsibility. And people from more populous areas would say he was the governor of a small, rural, poor state. So what? My next door neighbor, Melinda Webb, is a pediatrician, and she was at University of Arkansas Little Rock, and she always said that Bill always brought Chelsea in when needed something. Hillary never brought her in, and I always came in the back door and said, "Oh no, I'd make an appointment, but Chelsea needs a shot for whatever." I don't know, I always thought that was kind of funny. We are a poor rural southern state, and we just can't do everything. And so other states may have rural sociology departments, and they study this kind of stuff. Okay? We just can't study everything, and we can't offer majors for everything, and we also, because we're a low population state, we might not have enough people to study it even if we could afford it. Okay? So rural sociology is studying the dynamics of rural populations and how things are different in rural areas. And your author is a rural sociologist, but in general, rural sociology has faded away as a subject area, and even institutions that can afford it, lots of them have dropped rural sociology as an area of study. And it's just sociology. Okay. 3, should colleges of agriculture be promoting research and innovations like the mechanical tomato harvester? We're going to talk more about the mechanical tomato harvester later, but what we had was a need perceived by the University of California at Davis that we could save money if we could, instead of people picking tomatoes by hand, we could develop this machine that would pick tomatoes. Tomatoes are inherently kind of soft, and so first they had to breed a tomato which was hard enough that a mechanical tomato harvester would be able to pick the tomatoes, okay, not make them into ketchup on the way and then get them to a store. Okay? And so the question is, so the ramification then what happened was that you could only afford to buy a mechanical tomato harvester if you had certain acreage because they cost a lot of money. And so then we were able to have cost savings, but it forced all the small tomato growers out of business because they couldn't afford to buy a mechanical harvester. And this is all thanks to, wait for it, researchers at, wait just a little bit longer, University of California at Davis. So thank you very much, University of California at Davis researchers, because you put me out of business if either I picked tomatoes or 2, I had a small farm that couldn't afford the tomato harvester. And so the question is could universities be doing stuff that maybe has bad results? And it's hard to think of anybody that won in this because what you got was a hard, pink, flavorless tomato. That's what they developed that the machine could harvest. And so, university here, at your service, thank you very much. Is there anything like that the university is working on that you know of or can think of that might have negative implications like that? Or that they could work on? Should the university care? Does it matter? Does it matter if they put small farmers out of business?
I think that no matter what you do, any new technology, anything you create or like try to make for better, someone's going to hurt from it. Like someone, even if the majority likes it, at some point it's going to put someone at a disadvantage or something they don't like. So I think you have to keep pushing that and keep doing it, even though it's going to hurt some people to make this change, but overall in the long run it's going to be a good change.
It was good because we have these hard, flavorless tomatoes that you as consumers get to eat now, and it was really good because big farmers now can grow more of those hard, pink, flavorless tomatoes that nobody wants. Interesting to say there's going to be some negative, but should the university care? about what the consequences are of the innovation.
Just an alternative question. If the university has that information that would make your life easier and they don't disperse it, would you feel upset by that?
Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. Would I care if the university didn't do it?
Yeah.
Yeah, if I had a better tasting tomato, would I wish that I had this pink hard tomato in my salad?
Exactly. But if you were
something else, right?
If you were a tomato producer and that technology would have benefited you, would you have been angry with the university that you give you that information?
Yeah, I don't know. You say if private industry would do it. The thing is, the universities are taxpayer supported. So I'm paying taxes if I'm the small tomato grower.
But you're not a small. In this instance, you're not a small tomato farmer. You are a large producer, not a company, a large producer, but you are a single farmer.
Yeah.
And you had that technology. You needed that.
Yeah, I benefit. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Technology, and then and the college didn't give it to you.
Well, you could argue that if private industry wants to do that, go ahead. But when I take tax dollars to do it, some people say I don't know whether. Oh sure, but so are the small producers who got pushed out of business because of it. So it's just. I think you're saying I'm damned if I do and I'm damned if I don't as far as the university.
Except the university's there to give out information. So
in this case, the experiment station didn't just give out information; they did the research that made it happen. So they first had to develop this hard tomato, and then they developed the machine that would pick it. So they did. It took. We can show the video. It took like 10 years for them to do this, and again, it didn't happen overnight. But the end result was something that benefited some people and not others. Depending on your views about herbicides and insecticides, universities have been in collaboration with herbicide and insecticide companies for decades and say, gosh, I don't know whether that's good. Maybe we should be trying to do more organic methods of control. And we haven't because the chemical companies don't sell organic stuff. They sell chemical stuff. It just begs the question about if it's taxpayers funded, what happens to it? Is there some concern about what the consequences are?
Well, I was just going to say, I think that anything that we create is it's not going to be perfect when you start out with it. But you don't put that idea out there first, even if it's going to have negative consequences. That doesn't give people and even the developers a chance to give it to the people and say, hey, what's wrong with this? Take it back, try and fix it, and then advance it. So if we never do that, if you never put the information out there first, people will get a chance for them to say, okay, let's look at this, see what the problems are, take it back and fix it. We wouldn't have any advancement on anything if we didn't do that.
Yeah, if we tried to stop some innovations by going out.
Pretty sure that's the theme of Atlas Shrugged.
I'm sorry. What?
So pretty sure this is the theme of Atlas Shrugged.
Which is?
Of the book.
Well, I know it's a book, but the theme is
stifling if public opinion is stifling innovation.
Yeah, I think we look at it as when we're as taxpayers. That's the part that bothers us when we use the tax. If tax dollars are going to undermine my job, then we get kind of concerned. And there aren't any easy answers to this. But the University of California was sued, and there was. I think it's now 40% of the extension resources have to go towards small farmers because everything was going towards large farmers. Okay. Mort says the average American school lags 25 years behind the best practice. Okay, you got to wrap your head around that a little bit. Schools are 25 years behind what we know is the best thing we should be doing. Okay. Was anyone able to come up with an example of that?
Oklahoma and see that it's just behind the times a little bit, and with all the teachers wanting an increase in grades, which is probably rightly so, that's the predominant focus, but they need that so that they can further their education.
Okay, you're saying it has something to do with money?
Yes.
Here's kind of one of those quizzes. It bleeds over to a quiz question. Just one, it doesn't matter. Even if they got it wrong. A Columbia University study showed that blank was the best predictor of school innovativeness. This predicted whether a school was going to be innovative or not. And the answer was per pupil expenditures, money. Okay? Okay. If the school was innovative, so first, schools tend to be way behind what we know is best by about 25 years. Okay? And then we know that the schools that are most innovative tend to spend the most per student. So the schools that are not 25 years behind, maybe 15, 10, 5, 1 year behind, that are more innovative, their thing they have in common with other innovative schools is they spend the most per student. Okay, so can we put those two things together? If that's true, how does it work? How is it that they're more innovative? They're innovative because simply they spend more money?
For example, I think it was like books. So like my school I went to was like rural, like we didn't have like a lot of funding. And so like some of our books seem to be like way behind on what they should be. And my friends that went to the other school that had better funding had newer books. And so it was like they just kind of had better resources that helped them learn. Like,
more current books, maybe more challenging books, not the cheapest books. So certainly in terms of the curriculum that we're able to use, the curriculum materials, you could argue we had the advantage of having more up to date. Excellent. What else? Yes.
Personally at my school, I'm from Ohio, we got an online program that moved in. Well, with that, it gave a lot of money to our juniors, or like our junior high, elementary, and they're doing robotics and coding and everything. So they brought in a whole new program just because we opened up this program.
Okay, so you needed money for technology, which were the robots and the sophisticated computers. Okay, whereas if we are scratching to get pencils, we just can't afford that. Excellent. What else? Yes, ma'am, Katie.
Well, okay, I don't know a lot about it. What about STEM? Because when I was in high school, it wasn't a thing. But then when I graduated, they just had brought in like all these biotech, like STEM programs.
The focus on science, technology, engineering, and math. The more innovative schools were able to hire the teachers because they could pay them more to do that. They brought them maybe out of industry. They needed these materials for experimentation. Absolutely. If I had more money, and then we're willing to try it. And so we're going to buy this stuff that isn't in the budget because we got all kinds of money. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
I went to a small private school through 8th grade, and our problem was we had really old teachers who were not, like, didn't know, like, they were not at the time, like, they were teaching how we were in school, and they wouldn't retire fast enough, so we were still learning. Like, 8th graders were learning the same math as 5th graders because the math teacher didn't want to learn anything.
The more innovative schools are able to kill those older teachers. Now, see, I don't know there. That one's kind of tough. That I've got these, somebody would say is this poor school can't afford, and I got these young teachers that don't know anything or fresh out of school. Yes, they may be creative, but they're, I don't know, that one's tough. And sometimes you have the advantage of somebody like, let's say that's like 57. They have experience. They taught the class before, and they're really good if they were born in 61. I don't know. That one's really interesting because some older teachers are really good, and some younger teachers are really bad, and some young teachers. Anyways, that's tough on there. I don't know what to say in response because I resemble that remark.
Rural small town in southeast Kansas, and there's no popular, no rich schools until you get to Wichita, which is an hour and a half north of us.
Okay.
There's just no jobs, there's no economy, so like we can't have that funding. So we have a lot of teachers that get alternatively like emergency.
Oh, so you have teachers that aren't qualified because we can only afford certain ones. Yeah. Some people will say in private schools that some private schools are able to hire teachers that aren't certified and they have less quality. Other people will say we had this private school and we had better quality teachers, and so that just varies in everybody's own personal opinion. Yes, ma'am.
See, I'm from Northeast Oklahoma, and so I'm from Bonita, not very far from Indiana. And where, like, my high school, like, the elementary schools is the non-certified,
like still in college teachers.
Okay.
And like the high school teachers that's older up in age, when they want to retire from Oklahoma, we were only 25 minutes from Kansas. And they would go to Kansas or Missouri or Arkansas.
You feel like the best teachers left?
Yeah, like they retired from Oklahoma schools. And
Double
they
dip.
Yeah, and then like when I graduated, like my little sister, she's still in high school, and so like all their like they all still go to class on campus to the campus, but all their classes are online. They have like the school got funded Chromebooks, and so like they don't even touch textbooks anymore.
And you would say that'd be innovative to
Yeah.
have that we distribute
Like, when
computers to you?
Yeah, because when I was in high school, like we used books my older sister used and like my parents used, and so like it was like not even up to date.
Distance education is interesting. Did anyone have any distance ed classes in high school? What did you have?
I had a farm and ranch management from college.
You took a college class in high school.
We, in my 8th grade, we could take Spanish, but we had to, like, Skype kind of with the high school, like another high school.
Okay.
To teach it. And, like, we just had, like, a para in the room that just, like, supervised.
Okay, when I came here, German by satellite was one of the big offerings. OSU taught German and taught it all across the United States. And so some schools that were able to afford to buy their own satellite dish could have German offered in their school where otherwise they wouldn't. Now sometimes poor schools, that's how they're going to take physics, and you do it online, as opposed to we're going to actually hire a physics teacher. And so that kind of cuts both ways also. But in general, the more innovative schools have these, what we'll call slack resources. They got extra money. Did anyone have a physical education class in high school? For in Oklahoma, most don't have physical education. The high school that I taught in, we had a nuclear power plant. Before the nuclear power plant was built, the valuation, this is the taxing body for the district, was $45 million. That's how much they could tax. After the power plant, the valuation was $450 million. So this massive amount of money came into the district. 2 days before I started as the ag teacher, they bought the 60-acre farm next to us, and they just asked the lady how much they wanted, and she said, I want $225,000. I said, okay, that'd be fine. They built an Olympic-sized swimming pool and racquetball courts. This is for 300 kids in the high school. They taught canoeing, and every kid in the district learned how to swim. They were brought in. Okay? They bought roller skates so the kids could learn how to roller skate. They bought cross-country skis to teach cross-country skiing. Archery, all those things are expensive. And so they were very futuristic. The physical education teachers were very progressive, but we need money for all these things. And we just bought it. A little town next to us was Leaf River, and when kids would complain, they'd say, you people in Leaf River just be quiet or we'll just buy Leaf River. So there was this sense of having unlimited resources. Kids would say, if we were in the shop, as far as I'd say be careful with that, they'd say, what does it matter? We'll just buy more. Because there was just so much money to be had. And it's not magical, but it does allow you to be innovative. You can try new things. Okay? And so in terms of schools. One other thing that happens, that wasn't on purpose. One other is scheduling. Going too fast. Did any of you go to school? I wonder why that turned off. Oh, did I turn it off? Okay, there's. Did anyone go to school on a 4x4 block like this? Okay. Before we had this, lots of kids went to school on a 6-period day or a 7-period day. Okay. The school I taught in was on a 7-period day. The state of Illinois brought a bunch of new college requirements, more rigor to the school, and our school was considering an 8-period day. Okay, some of you may have been on that. And the year I left, rather than go to an 8-period day, they decided to go to a 4x4 block, which looked like this. In the fall, you take those 4 classes. In the spring, you take those 4 classes. And you're able to take 8 classes in a year. You're able to. Okay? 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon. Okay? So you're able to get 1 more. And so for teachers that taught electives, you have a chance that kids have more time for your classes. Okay? If you're a coach, you have the idea that in Oklahoma, where athletics is part of the school day, and that's not the same in all states, but they say, okay, if this starts at 1:30, that'll be great. We'll start football practice at 1:30, and we can go till 4 o'clock. Basketball, track, whatever, golf. And so you still, even if you do athletics for the last period, you still have 6 classes that you're able to get 6 credits in. So this is a very innovative type of approach, but it's not the only one. It's turned out to be one of the more popular ones. There's also this one. It's called an A-B block. And on A day, you go to 1, 3, 5, and 7. And on B day, you go to 2, 4, 6, and 8. Monday's A, Tuesday's B. Wednesday's A, Thursday's B. Monday's A again. And you just, when you show up to school, they'll have big letters. Today's A day, in case you forgot. Because it is kind of confusing, but you only got 4 classes to go to. And maybe you really only have 3 classes to go to. Again, pretty progressive. The advantage of this one is if Algebra 1 is here, if I flunk it, I can come back the next semester and take Algebra 1 again. If I'm a traditional 6, 7, or 8 period day, if I flunk Algebra 1, I got to wait next year again. Here, they're like 80, 90-minute periods. If I'm in agriculture, I got a lot of time to be able to get in the shop, do field trips, do projects, work in the greenhouse. Great. Family consumer science, I want to be able to get actual things done. And so that's very considered equally progressive, not as many do. When I was in high school, we had a 19-period day. Every class period was 19 minutes long. Some classes were they were called modules. Some classes were 1 mod, some classes were 2 mods, and some classes were 3 mods. Okay, agriculture classes, foreign language, family consumer science, all got 3 mods. You could take a class in comic books, and that was just 1 mod long, just 20 minutes long. Okay. The school wasn't particularly innovative otherwise, wasn't particularly wealthy, but to do it, it took extra resources, and a few years later when budget got slim, they abandoned it and went back to an 8-period day. In terms of being innovative, generally schools that have more resources can be more innovative. The fewer amount of resources we have, the less likely we're going to be innovative. Okay? Okay. Kindergarten. And lastly, what is a maven?
Someone who's experienced or an expert on a certain topic.
Okay, and in this case, they were trying to use experts or people that were very interested in cars to push the electric car. Okay, so they found these opinion leaders, people that are very interested in cars. They brought them into the car dealerships to tell them all about the electric cars. And then they gave them, among other things, they gave them 50 baseball-style cards that they could give to their friends. Okay? So why is it that, well, first, is anyone driving an electric car? Kind of amazing, isn't it, that given that was 1980, 40 years later, none of you are driving electric cars. Was this approach a failure? What happened?
I feel like it's just diffusing more slowly.
It's come back now. Now electric cars have been reborn. Okay.
I'd say
say it's like kind of like a hassle to have to plug it in when there's not that many. Like,
More complicated,
Yeah.
maybe, than filling up with gasoline? I'm sorry?
It was just ahead of its time.
It's possible that the timing was wrong. Others believed that there was a conspiracy by the oil and gas industry to kill the electric car.
Oh, that makes sense.
Okay. Have you ever heard of this? Okay. Let's see how we're doing. Okay. We'll see a little bit of it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here today to bereave the loss of something dear to us. We are here today to say goodbye to a special friend, to say goodbye to an idea. Some might say that to be here gathered today to mourn the loss of a car would be going too far.
In 1996, electric cars began to appear on roads all over California. They were quiet and fast, produced no exhaust, and ran without gasoline. 10 years later, these futuristic cars were almost entirely gone.
I misspoke. 1996 to 2006.
What happened? Why should we be haunted by the ghost of the electric car? This wasn't the first time the electric car was killed. 100 years ago, there were more electrics on the road than there were gas cars. For many people, electric cars were the car of choice. They were quiet and smooth.